test. So it looks like I'm live. So this is live streaming, and I'm just testing it out. And what I want to do is actually I want to stream my screen, but it doesn't seem to be. Well, is somebody there? So I want to stream my screen because recently I installed the OBS software. That's great for streaming, but you have to hook it up to YouTube, and I've never done streaming before, and so I'm experimenting. Hey there. So are you here for Emacs? Are you following me for Emacs? So anyway, so yeah, so I can see people talking, but what I want to do is to share my screen so I can show Emacs stuff. So, I mean, this is just a test. So on YouTube, you have a YouTube account, you go to it and you can just click and it'll just start streaming live. But I don't see any option to make it so that, the screen is shared. Yeah, thank you. I'm always happy to hear that. So I want to, so on YouTube, I don't see any option to share my screen. However, on the OBS software, I wish I can show you, but you cannot see it because, well, let's try this, just to show you something interesting. So here's my keyboard. Here's my workstation, my power station, and it's on the corner of a room. My room is very messy. It's one of those where there's no pathway. I mean, if you walk into my room, you have to, there's a path. Outside of that, it's all garbage. Well, not garbage. Because I keep things clean, but outside of it, it's all dust and 10 years old mails and boxes. So anyway, I want to stream. So you cannot see my screen. So this is, stupid way to see my screen. So this is my, Emacs stuff. So anyway, so I'm just trying things out. This is first, if you don't test it, you never know. So, this is just a test. I think I'm gonna quit maybe, yeah, because there's nothing to do here. So anyway, so there's this OBS software. You can look it up, OBS. It stands for Open Broadcasting Streamer, something like that. And, I started to use it yesterday and it's fantastic. You can go to YouTube and search for OBS tutorial. And so it seems to be a great software because it's available for Linux, for Mac, and Windows, and it's open source. There are several others, people suggested to me, but anyway, this is one of the popular ones and seems works well. So yesterday I recorded the video with OBS and it works well, except that my setting output have a small screen, so so things are very fuzzy, but that's just a setting. I tried it later and it works fine. You just increase the screen output size. By the way, so behind me, that's my bed. I've been when you go to sleep, you just sleep on the floor. I've been actually sleeping on the floor for the past 20 years. So anyway, so yeah, OBS is great, and so right now I'm just clicking the YouTube button and do a stream. But with OBS, I can, it's it's easy. You can just set up stream and you can share your screen. But again, I'm trying this for the first time, so I just have to start somewhere, try something. So right now I'm using YouTube, and I cannot share my screen, and so I'm gonna quit and try the OBS streaming from OBS. Hi Zen. Zen, so you are from China? Are you from China or in USA? Well, if you are on YouTube, it's likely you are from USA. I have lots of Chinese programmer friends. Chinese programmer friends, they follow me for my Emacs stuff. 中文，我也说中文，很久没有说中文了，因为在国外，中文朋友也很少，通常，所以很久没说中文了。有的时候说起中文来，会觉得很别扭，因为如果比方说电脑的东西，中文不知道怎么说。So anyway, so with OBS software, you start the software and you set up, streaming. There's a preference box, and you set up, which server you wanted to send the data to. So there's an option for YouTube, and you can do that. Then it looks like another thing critical to set up streaming to YouTube is that there's a key, like a secret key, identification key. So you have, YouTube will give you that. You just paste that to the OBS software. So, so you need two things, the YouTube server, which OBS already knows. YouTube also shows you a URL, and you need a key. So you put that in OBS software, and you can just click start streaming, and that should work. So, I'm going to try that. And there's other settings. So OBS is like a professional, dedicated software for streaming and recording. So it's much better than QuickTime. I was using QuickTime on the Mac. It's free, and there's also a QuickTime Professional version, but I haven't used it. But anyway, so OBS looks like much better than QuickTime because you can stream and meanwhile also record it, and you can also have multiple video sources, like one from webcam, and you can have even two webcam, like two webcams and one from your screen, and you can also have multiple audio sources, and it looks like it's much easier to control. I mean, you have many options. Whereas if you just use QuickTime Player to record, it's just very simple. It just there's not much options, no streaming. Okay, so with I want to share the screen, because if I have the screen, I can talk much more, because after I'm talking about Emacs and programming related stuff. And well, with video, there's no I can show you my keyboard, but Emac causes RSI. Vim is better. There are also people using Vim. I want to show you this. I cannot show you the website. So, but anyway, there are also people with using Vim, and who got severe RSI hand pen. Who is that? It's a famous programmer. It's the guy who started. That programming language is kind of gone out of fashion, almost TCL. So his name is John Horst or something. Like, anyway, he's the guy who started TCL. He created, invented TCL, and he got RSI severely. I mean, we're talking about debilitating, disabled. So anyway, so I'm going to start. Let me try test typing. Test, 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 test. Can you see that? Okay, my stupid camera is keep showing my bed, like ugly shit. Like I show you my room. Okay, so you can see how messy it is. It's, that's a math book. That's set theory and stuff, and that's junk. And junk. So anyway, I'm going to okay, so someone is saying using control square bracket, control left square bracket uh, for escape. No, that's the worst. I'm telling you because I'm an expert. you know, that's the worst. You never want to do that. Okay, so if you are using yeah, well, okay, even both hands, you don't, I don't, it's not a good method. First of all, there's a lot to talk about keyboarding, the method, how you type and stuff. So I can go on and on. But anyway, I'll give you a few points. First of all, the reason for that is, first of all, it depends on how much you type, By that, I mean, you have to measure it. Like you use a keyboard, keylog software, so you can know actually how many keystrokes you type a day. So among programmers or casual users and also professional, bloggers or typers, there's a huge difference on how much you actually type. So between, let's say if you type 50 words per hour, so there are people who type 3 hours a day. Like if you look at your key log, it tells you how many keystrokes. So some people are in this category, some people are in this category, some people are middle, but they differ a lot. Like over here it's 10 times more typing than here, and over here is 10 times more typing than here. So for most programmers, you actually don't type that much. You are on the low end. So from your experience, you don't see how those other people, they have to type 10 more times, 10 times more than what you do. And one day, possibly maybe one day you work in maybe a startup or something. There's, some project you need to finish. And you type, you work 50 hours, 60 hours a week. Then that's when you start to get pain. Then all your advices, you think that's good, but that's not gonna be no good. So okay, first of all, you need to know, you need to use a keylogger to, or have some idea, just exactly how much you type, at what level, stuff you are actually typing. Then the problem with okay, so if you don't, if you are an average programmer, control square bracket, that works okay. Maybe you work, especially if you are younger. But if you are, if you type much more than that, you find that may not work for you. Okay, that's the first thing. Find out how much you type actually. The second thing is, if you really type a lot, then control square bracket is not really good, because the square bracket, the left square bracket, uh, key on a normal standard keyboard is typed by your pinky, and also it's like way out on the, it's like way on the top or on the right, depending on what layout you use. So that, you don't want to do that, especially if you are using Vim. If you are using Vim, or if you are using Microsoft like keys, switching mod is one of the most used command, like the number one, basically almost the number one. So you have to switch mod every minute. So for such a command, you don't want to use pinky, and also plus the control key is hard to do. Okay, the other option, using set caps lock to escape, that I think that's reasonably good. Okay, so yeah, so if you want to switch to okay, so you are using Evo mod or or Vim or I want to shout out for my mod Starfly keys. You can look it up. So all these are modal key bindings. You press a key to switch to command mod. So for those, so you need one key that does that, and that key must be the most easy to use. So I would suggest also depends on what keyboard you use, because most people use a normal laptop keyboard or normal PC keyboard. Okay, so for those um, you can put the caps lock to do escape, or or set caps lock to some other key, and that key basically you want the caps lock key on the left pinky position to switch to the command mod. It's not necessarily escape because anyway, so yeah, do that. That's a good option. But if you have other keyboard like my Kinesis keyboard, or actually let me show you then since I'm talking. So this is my Kinesis. So actually I'm using, this is a caps lock. This is my left side. This is my left hand. So this is a caps lock. Let's see if I can. So this is a good option, which actually I'm using. Actually, my right hand. This key is also my pinky. This key is also switched to command mod. So I have two keys. So I have two because that's the command you use every minute. The most used command. I can't show you my screen now because otherwise I'll do, and I show you my key lock, and the key lock shows. The key log will tell you, which command you used how many times. It records all your commands. So if you want to, I would recommend using that. So you just search for key frequency. I mean, the mod is called key frequency, but it's abbreviated. So it's key-freq.el. So install that, and it'll log your mod. It's yeah, do that. So I'm saying, if you are using a Kinesis keyboard like mine, so the caps lock over here or over here is good, but also the thumb keys is also good for switching to command mod. There are many choices. Depends on. Um, Thank you. I'm always happy to hear good things. Yeah, so mechanical keyboard is great. MacBook Pro keyboard. I'm not sure about that. So anyway, so my bed is a mess. I don't want to show that. So actually I should, maybe I can show you some keyboards since a few people are here. Let's see how many. 4 people. Well, 4 is a crowd. so let's see. Yeah, why not? I show you some of my stuff then. So, well, I wanted to. Okay, hold on a second. So I got several fancy keyboards here. They are great keyboards. They are great ergonomic keyboards. So I can show you. Okay, so these here are three greatest keyboard. I recommend any one of them. So there's Kinesis Advantage 2, and here you have is let's see if I move that away. So this one is Expo keyboard. It's also a great compact keyboard. Let's see if it shows. So you can see Expo's keyboard. And this one is also, this is one of the most wonderful. This is called UHK Ultimate Hacking Keyboard. It can be taken apart like that. Let me show you. See, so you can put legs up, so it's so you can type it. Anyway, so I my camera is pretty lousy because I haven't done a review on this because the camera cannot focus well. For example, you see it doesn't focus. Sometimes right now it's fuzzy. So it's very frustrating. So I cannot do much keyboard reviews with that. But anyway, so these three keyboards, this one is like $320 or $350, something like that. This one is much cheaper. I forgot how much, but it's 150, I think, or under 200. Okay, so this is cheaper. They are all mechanical keys, and this is more expensive. This is like 250, something like that. Okay, I don't quote me on the price because it's bad to say how much a thing costs on the video, because people say if you say $200, then people they go to the website and they found out it's 100 or 250. They freak out, and also the company is not going to link to your video because you got the price, you got the wrong price. So anyway, so you'll notice if you actually do video reviews, a lot of people online do video reviews of products. They almost never mention price. I mean, that's one thing you learn. Because price, how much a thing costs, it's like it fluctuates. It's actually, well, it depends on market. They say the supply and demand, so it changes all the time. Okay, so I think that's it. So how many people? 5 people. Well, I'm going to try to set up the OBS software so I can do stream with my screen. So on the corner you'll see me, and I can show you a screen. That's I can show programming. That would be much more interesting. So anyway, any questions? Since we are here, any questions? We can. This is great, actually. I got 5 people. 5 people is a lot of people. Okay, so I've been observing society. Well, because I'm the observer kind of guy. I don't want the camera to show my fucking stupid bed behind it. It's okay. Yeah, high up, you can just see my face then. So 4 people. So yeah, I was looking at YouTube. There are so many people now making YouTube videos. the web, the web started, in 1990s, 1995, and beginning around 2000, we started to have videos, and YouTube started sometimes around 2000 something, early 2000, and throughout 2000, it's starting from very few videos, to today's everyone is making a video, right? Because of the phone and so that. So anyway, so you observe all the videos phenomenon. In the beginning, let's say 2005. Every time a programmer doing a talk about some programming topics, it gets popular. Several thousand views or more, 10,000 views, because at that time, because there's not much videos, so the sense is that, oh, some well-known programmer is doing a talk about some topic, and all the people start to watch it. But over time, like today, if you are a famous programmer, well, let's say a well-known programmer, that's maybe a professor, something, you do a video talking about programming, nobody watches, 20,000. That's the most you get, you know so because there's so much information, and so everywhere. My first programming language, well, that depends on what you mean by language. Well, so my first one is HP28S calculator. That's a HP calculator. Actually, I wrote a blog about it. If you just search my name, Ksali, HP28S, you'll see my blog. So that was in 1992, and I didn't learn any programming until 1999. So I didn't know what I have no idea computer science about anything. But back then in the early 1990s, I'm a very serious math fanatic. I live in math. So anyway, so HP28S, I think it's one of the first. I don't think it's the first. Maybe it's the second. It's the first calculator to let you do plotting, graphing calculator. Also, it's the first calculator that contains symbolic programming. So you can actually solve, quadratic equations with it. So I use it. My first program is to solve the 8 queens problem. Have you guys heard of the 8 queens problem? So 8 queens problem is like on a chessboard. You want to place 8 queens on the chessboard, so that you want to position them so that no queen checks another queen. So my first programming is solving that using the HP28S calculator. So that's my first, if you count that as a language. But so and that's using stacks, like every time you have a value, you push it on a stack, and you have, let's say you want to do 1 plus 2. So you press 1, put it on a stack, and you press 2, enter, put it on a stack. Then you press plus, plus sign, and they take the arguments from the previous stacks. So you get 3. So the stack is now just 3. So that's stack. So one language uses stacks like that is Forth. It's like Forth. That's the name of the language, but I actually never looked into Forth. But it's one of those languages, people talk about, like hackers type. It's interesting. So anyway, so my real first programming language is Mathematica. I've been programming Mathematica for every day for 10 years in 1990s. So I would say that's the most. So Mathematica is what I would consider is the most advanced language today. I mean, even today, it's slower than other languages, but it's far more powerful and advanced than Haskell or whatever, by far. I mean, all the languages, so you have C low-level languages, you have Python, Perl, Ruby, PHP. That's kind of high level. High level meaning like one line is like 10 lines of C or C++. Okay, so Python, Ruby, Python, Ruby, and JavaScript, PHP. Then you might consider Haskell to be, Haskell or Camel to be like kind of like higher than that, because functional programming uh, you can do more. Well, yeah. So you might consider Haskell to be on top, or some other languages, whatever your favorite, Golang, today's new land, Clojure, Golang, um, um, there's a lot. So there's so many languages today. So anyway, but Mathematica, Mathematica is over here. I'm not, I kid you not, because Mathematica is if you it's proprietary language, and um, it's proprietary, so most people don't look at it, because today's world is open source, especially open source phonetics. I'm sure a lot of you are, because that's the community I live in. So open source world, most people, when they hear proprietary, they don't even bother looking into it. So so that's a fact of life. So a lot of people, you don't know Mathematica, but Mathematica is it's a Lisp. It's the language is basically a Lisp. I would say Lisp, or in the family of Lisp. It's almost exactly like every essential characteristic qualities that define Lisp. May it be closure scheme, common Lisp, or Emac Lisp. The essential qualities that define Lisp is in Mathematica. So it's a Lisp. However, if you ask the guy, he wouldn't. Stefan Wolfram, he's a guy. He started Mathematica and Wolfram Alpha. He probably would not say, because he's very people say he's a megalomaniac, so he wouldn't he wouldn't give credit, but to Lisp. But anyway, if you look at old literature like online, you'll see a lot comparisons of Mathematica and Lisp. So anyway, yeah, Mathematica is actually my first programming language, and that's mostly scientific programming. Scientific programming is totally different from industrial programming. Most people, like when we talk about programming, that's all industrial programming. Very few actually ever did scientific programming. Scientific programming is very different. So what are the languages of scientific programming? So Mathematica, Julia, MATLAB, R. Those are, APL. Those are like scientific programming languages. All the rest, like Golang, Perl, C++, C Sharp, even Haskell. Well, okay, C Sharp and Perl, Python, PHP. All those are like industrial programming. They are, in a sense, so they are totally different from scientific programming. The language is totally different. The concept is totally different. And also the programming, what actually you do, the problem you solve, is also totally different. Now, there's one simple way, kind of like criteria to tell whether a language is scientific programming language or industrial programming language. That is, you look at array index, whether the array index start at 0 or 1. Okay, so if the array index start at 0, it's industrial programming language. It's shit. Now, if the array index start at 1, that's scientific. I have articles about that. I have like 100. Well, I have like 6,000 HTML pages I've written over the past 20 years. But anyway, I have written an article about array index, and also about scientific programming languages. If you search for math-oriented languages. Anyway, so yeah, array array index is one of the way to tell a language is scientific programming language or math oriented. And also, it's funny, like most programmers, they admire, or they look up to mathematicians because they think math, they look up to math, like they think math is above them, vast, most programmers, industrial programmers, like mathematicians are over there. So, and also industrial programmers, they don't know math much. um, but anyway, so so like among hacker, like for hackers, like on hacker news, like people who are hacker news all the time, or slash dot before that, they think they look up to mathematicians. So when it comes to array index, should it start to from 0 or 1, they always recourse, they reason, they always tend to say, oh, because it should start at 0 because mathematics, this or that, therefore it should be 0. It's so idiotic, because if you actually look at mathematical languages, math languages, programming languages for doing math, they all start at 1. And personally, I think 1 is much better. 0 is extremely idiotic. 1 is much better because, especially when you are doing matrices, matrices you have. So what is a matrix? Matrix is basically like an array, nested array. You have several level of deep nesting array. So if you have two levels, you have two-dimensional matrix. You have three-level nesting, you have three-dimensional matrix. But it can be nested more. Then you have tensors. Now, if each sublist is of the same length, so you have two-dimensional matrix, three-dimensional matrix, or you have tensors. But if each sublist is maybe different length, then you have trees. Yeah, exactly. Julia started at 1. That's why most almost all math-oriented languages, they start at 1. Okay, so that's about array. So how I make a living? I don't make much. I'm actually very poor. I'm like, okay, here's normal people. Here's poverty by U.S. standards, and I'm here. I'm the poverty below poverty. So I like these days I make like $1,000 a month. That's right, $1,000. So I don't make much anyway. So now, so what should I talk about that? That's a subject. Richard Stallman. Yeah. And also, why do you stick to Mac? I don't stick to Mac. Like people get the impression, I'm because right now I'm on the Mac or something. People think I'm Mac. So Richard, well, those are big topics. Like I have tens of articles about them. So let's talk about the Mac Linux first. So I started to use a computer in 1990. Almost exactly 1989, but I started to use computer every day for many hours a day in starting around 1991. So from 1990, basically throughout 1990s, my main computer at home or personal computer is Mac. And that's okay. So that's, Mac. So I stopped using Mac in 2009. Okay, like stopped totally. Before, throughout 1990s, I'm a Mac person. I'm a, you can call it Mac fanatic. Mac people are like, they are fanatics. They are like kind of idiotic and fanatic. And today it's worse. It's more, it's luxury. It's elite people. So anyway, but I started programming career in 19 officially. Well, I worked for Wolfram Research, the guy who makes, the company who makes Mathematica, in 1995. but my real industrial programming is in 1998, where the startup boom, the bubble in Silicon Valley is, so I was member of a startup. So so what I do is Unix, Solaris, sysadmin, and dev. Uh, that's all Unix stuff. I mean, like today, Linux, people think, oh, Linux is so advanced, but back then, the Unix, the Solaris, they are far more complicated, than today's Linux, and frustrating. Yeah, the Unix is shit. But anyway, so so after Mathematica, so in 1998, I'm programming Perl. Perl, that's my primary language. Perl is one of the language I know so well back then. Not today. I forgot. It's in 20 years. So Perl is a language, and but if I want to pick it up, in 1 month, I can. Same for you. Whatever programming language you learned, even you forgot, but if you at one point you know it so well, you can learn it. After for a month, and you'll know. But anyway, so Perl. So there was Perl, Solaris, Apache. Apache web server, and Linux. Well, not Linux. Perl, Java. Oh yeah, Perl, Java, Solaris, and Apache, and MySQL. MySQL and Oracle. We were using Oracle database. So remember, this is 1998 to 2002, and we are so I worked. We are the actually the project I work on. It's the I would say I cannot prove it, but I would say it's a project with the most lines of code in Perl. So it's the biggest Perl project in the world. Let's say biggest, top 5 biggest. Okay, let's make it that way. So anyway, back then. So anyway, what I'm not sure which aspect to talk to it, because I got distracted and I went on and on. So oh yeah, so why do I stick to Mac to over Linux? Oh anyway, so yeah, I was talking about so I was at home I'm still using a Mac, but at work we use Windows NT, and Solaris is we have servers, remote servers, and we have in-house servers, and we have staging servers, and back then, well, it's not like today. Today it's much things are more, everything is more simpler. But anyway, so those Solaris boxes, they cost $40,000. The Solaris boxes. I have pictures on my site somewhere. But anyway, so although I'm a Mac user, but I'm my main programming activity, my main programming expertise is with Unix. So the first Linux I ever used and installed is in 1998. It's called MK Linux. Now MK Linux, you can look at you can search the web. That's the Linux the Apple started. Because at the time, open source just came into the scene. So Apple, and there's a Linux, so Apple want to experiment. So anyway, so MK Linux is the first Linux I installed and used. So mostly, in around 2002 or 2003, the Apple switched to Mac OS X, Mac OS 10. That's Linux. That's Unix-based Mac OS. Anyway, that's long history. So I stopped using Mac in 2009. So up to from 1990 to 2009, Mac is my main system at home, for whatever I do. But then for 2 years, I use Linux. Well, no, not Linux. Windows was my main system. Windows Vista for 2 or 3 years as my main desktop. Then around 2014 or something like that, or 2013, I switched to Linux. So Linux was my main desktop for like 3 or 4 years. And I switched back to Mac for 2 years ago. Because why? Because a professor gave me a Mac, so I have a Mac. I don't have money to buy a Mac. So uh, so so if you so what are so which is best? I can tell you which is the best. uh, Mac. So basically their characteristics remain the same over the past 20 years. Okay, their characteristics remains the same. So if you want the cheapest and workable operating system, you go with Windows. It's bundled with every laptop or computer you buy, and it works reasonably well. I mean, it's something, the user interface is not as pretty as Mac, and the but it works. You can plug in, you can buy devices like pen computing, like you can plug in several. Like I bought this here. You can, and you have gaming mouse. Let's see, where is my, let's see, gaming mouse. So I have actually quite several other mouses, but this mouse is great. One of the most important feature about mouse. Hold on a second. Is a spinning. Is a spin wheel. See, it can spin up to like uh, 20 seconds. Oops. Yeah. So especially on Linux, because on Linux you don't have accelerated wheel scroll on Linux. It's extremely stupid. Anyway, so so for Windows, everything just works. You can use it. For Mac, everything is much more beautiful and much more intuitive. Like when you use Mac, it just works. I mean, seriously, it's true. It's true in the 1990s. It's true in 2000. It's true today. On the Mac, things just work. However, you don't have as much software. Like whenever, like Second Life games or some experimental software or Java, on the Mac, you don't have it. Apple, you live in Apple's world. Like Java, for example, Java the language, since 20 years ago, every Java version, they come out on Solaris first, of course, when Solaris was still alive. Then they come out on Windows first. For the Mac version, you wait for half a year or 1 year, and it sucks. And Flash, for example, Flash, Macromedia Flash, on Windows, it works so well. On the Mac, it's like 2-3 times slower. And and whenever there's a new version for the Mac, it's like 2 years. So and also for chat software like Skype, there's AOL chat. When webcam just became popular. On the Windows, everyone can video cam, to every other. On the Mac, you can't. Skype doesn't support it, or AOL chat doesn't support it. The Mac version doesn't support it. Yahoo chat, doesn't support it. So on the Mac, you have these problems. And also on the Mac, everything is twice as expensive. That's just the way the way things are, because corporations, and the way corporations are, because that's the way they make money. Every corporation, um, they do whatever they can to make money. Anyway, so Mac, yeah. So on the Mac, things are much more intuitive, much more easier. They just design everything is better, but things are much more expensive. And also, you basically you don't play games on the Mac. Some people may disagree. I mean, I've been in the Mac since Mac scene for 20 years. So a lot of people will say some Mac fanatics. I mean, everything you say about Mac, some Mac fanatics will counter. Oh yeah, but stream is on the Mac or something. Like, oh, every game you can play is available on Mac. Available on my ass. Okay, it just doesn't work. And also on the Mac, you cannot install graphics card. On the PC, you can. You spend $100. You know, even a cheap graphics card, it makes a huge difference. On a Mac, you basically cannot. You just buy Apple's preset stuff. Okay, on Linux is actually the worst. I hate to say this. I know many of you are Linux fans. I'm a hardcore programmer type. I don't care for commercialism or stuff. So I really want Linux to succeed. But Linux is the worst of the Mac or Windows. Everything, like when I use Linux, for example, it's almost every week I have to spend like 2 hours like first about things, installing stuff. Things doesn't work, find out why it doesn't work, go to Stack Overflow, go to Arc Linux. Arc Linux has a great wiki. They talk about hardcore details and how things work. So on Linux, so I am very interested in programming and technical details. But however, when you use Linux, you just find yourself, like you spend like half an hour a day to first about user interface, and mouse, how to control it, how to reprogram it. It's a time drain. And everything doesn't work. I mean, yeah, everything, the programming languages, installing things or whatever, especially audio and video. I mean, don't even talk about audio or video. It doesn't work. I mean, of course, there's also Linux fanatics. They'll say, oh, it works, you just have to do this, that. But anyway, what I'm saying is that even if you are a hardcore dedicated hardcore programmer or computer scientist, you understand, you are a professional, and you are willing and very interested to spend huge amount of time to look at the kernel or whatever details. Even that, Linux still sucks. It just that's my opinion. But however, the advantage of Linux is that it's open source. It's not like Apple, tightly controlled with money. Apple, everything they do is like they set up a track so that you end up just paying them. Pay them. Maybe their peripheral devices, the way they advertise their software, the Apple Store, the fucking Apple Store. Since 10 years ago, you started have a trend, and like every software is in Apple Store or Android Store, Google Store or Microsoft Store, and anyway, so Linux, yeah, it's free, it's open source, but you get what you pay for. I know some of you are Linux fans. Okay, let's talk about RMS, and Richard Stallman and Free Software Foundation. So I was a fan. I was, a fanatic of Richard Stallman, and well, it's a long history. So I was a Richard Stallman, but over the 10 years, I don't think he's so good. Okay, so let me just describe a few details. So there's Richard Stallman started the GPL, Free Software Foundation. Then in around 1995, the open source began, the open source movement. That's actually an organization. They began because the reason they began because they want to, they want to be a intermediate between the commercial world and the free software Richard Stallman world. They want to be like because the Richard Stallman world of software is like very ethical or more morality based. Because Richard Stallman he wants to it's based essentially it's communism. Okay, now many people will especially open source fans will say, "Oh no, it's not communism." Actually, it is. I mean, the essential idea of free software is communism. I mean, the idea is that everyone shares. I don't owe things. I whatever I do, I make money. I share. I share my software. Basically that's the essential idea. Share everything. you know, and so the open source movement came along. It started by this guy ESR Eric. Um, um, what's it? ESR Eric Raymond. Yeah, Eric Simon Raymond. Yeah. Anyway, so he's a questionable guy. He's he's more questionable. He's anyway. So ESR he started open source. So the reason is that because Richard Stallman is too much ideology. So he want to create something about called open source. The idea is that so commercial world can it's open source, but it's not morality. Okay, it's just open source. Everyone can look at the source. And there's a war between the two factions. Actually, they today a lot of people don't know today, but they are at war. The Richard Stallman, the free software camp versus the open source. They are like, I mean, I'm talking about war, not just I don't like them. They seriously fight each other. To this day, today. I mean, if you say there's a video 10 years ago, someone invited Richard Stallman to give a lecture, and the host, start by saying, I want to thank you very much, Richard Stallman, for all the work you did to the open source community and stuff. And Richard Stallman got offended. What the fuck? If you say my work is open source, you don't understand my work at all. There's a video on YouTube. And so Richard Stallman, so they are open source and free software foundation is at war. That's why there's an acronym FOSS that was created. It's supposed to include both Richard open source and free software foundation. So they say FOSS or FLOSS software. Yeah. So anyway, so that's Richard Stallman. So I was a fan. I was a believer of Richard Stallman. And I despised. So I was on the Richard Stallman's camp. I despised open source because I think open source. What I want people to share. I mean, that's a higher moral quality. You write a software, you share it. Why not? That's important. But then. So anyway, that's back then. That's 2000. So I have an article. If you want to find out my opinions about open source, you can just search my name, Xali, and Xali Free Software Foundation, or Xali Open Source, or Xali, whatever topic, Haskell, Perl, or Golang. Golang is my favorite language. You'll find lots of articles. So I was fan of Richard Stallman, but then. Not today. I think he's still reasonable. I mean, when we judge people, we have to look at all things, like the whole humanity, like the history of humanity. So Richard Stallman, how do I judge him? So okay, first of all, I think he's basically what he's doing is selling an ideology, and that's the most harmful. That can get people killed. Millions, thousands, millions of people died because of communism. He is selling ideology, and he have no idea about economics. Like when you talk about the capitalism or communism, we get abstract. The best thing to do is actually look at statistics, like how things actually are. You look at the communist countries and how they do pretty bad. Million people died out of either execution or starvation, um, because things didn't work out. People die. Then so you look at actually what happens. Not You don't buy into beliefs or ideology or what is good. You look at when you implement this policy, when this policy is used, what actually happens to people. Things like that. Always scientific. It's like keyboard. People say, "Oh, you should set keys to this or that, or you should use Vim or whatever." Look at scientific evidence as much as possible. I mean, not all things can have a scientific evidence, or there's no research, but you actually start to measure. Use a key lock software, measure how much key you type a day, and use a camera, record your fingers. Then you can compare. You can see whether this is good or that is bad. Be scientific as much as possible in the practical. So anyway, so I was pro Richard Stallman, but today, so I think he's selling ideology. It's no good, and especially today, in the past 10 years, he's he's the number one guy who did damage to Emacs, the biggest, greatest damage to Emacs. I mean, he haven't been coding for like 20 years, and he's asking, what is magic? What is Melpa? Why is people using Melpa? Can you guys tell people not to use Melpa and use GNU Emacs? He's saying that things. You can see on his emails. So he's a fuckhead. He's out of touch with the world. I mean, okay, so that's first thing I want to say about him. He's selling ideology and he's out of touch, and he is the one person who did the most damage to progress of Emacs in the past 10 years. Okay. On the other hand, okay, so we have to judge a person throughout history, not just a narrow view. But compared to all other persons in the world, I think he's still a good person. He's a reason. He's a good person. He's a good person because although he's kind of an ideologist, but there are a lot much worse. Priests, for example, they preach religion. They make a lot of money. They're cheating people. And there's also anyway politicians and anyway. So Richard Stallman, and one thing good about him is that he's true to himself. I mean, he preach what he does. So he doesn't cheat your money. I mean, although he's the head of the ideology, so he doesn't have to worry about things. People like the Emacs in the past 10 years. Who did the work? It's not Richard Stallman. It's all the other people. But however, all the people just remember one guy, Richard Stallman. Like you ask me. People ask me, well, what do I think of him? It's all the other people. I mean, he's the only one taking the credit, basically. So anyway, so anyway, so the good thing about him is he's a honest and true to himself guy, and he and also free software. The idea. Basically, it's a good idea. I mean, you share software. Why not? You share. If you can, you share. It's always good to do that, right? So that's what but not in a degree when it becomes an ideology like today. Like when today it has become a massive, very bad criminal, ideology, especially mixed with the social justice. It become so you start with the mentality of helping people share and everything, and now it has become it went to the social justice. Becomes that it becomes a dictatorship and all that. But I would say it has roots from open source as well, from the free software foundation, open source, the share mentality, and also all the big corporations, the bloodthirsty Google and Apple, who helped open source the most? Ask yourself who is the guy who helped open source? It's Google and Facebook too. Facebook too. They say, oh, our software is open source, and also Apple. Remember back in 2002 when Mac OS 10 came out, Apple says, oh, we use the open source, the most industrial stable system, the Unix. And anyway, so look at what Google has become. Most of you probably agree. Google has become the most evil empire, far more evil than Microsoft. It's so sad that and their software has also become so bad. It's so sad, like in 2000s, like it's us. We helped Google, because Google is so great. It's a company that do no evil, and everything they do is so great. But now their ads, their practice, their tactics, the thing they do, it's so bad. So it's a anyway. So that's yeah, and OpenGL, yeah, that's another topic. OpenGL is a long story. So anyway, so I'm gonna end this stream. I've been random talking. Thank for an hour now. So it's a thank you. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I'm gonna try do stream. I'm going to try the OBS software. So thanks, guys. Bye. So okay, how do you actually exit? Okay, end stream.